There were many kinds of legends in Redstone Ridge, tales of outlaws, gold strikes, and ghost riders, but none were spoken of more often, or with more certainty, than the beauty of Clara Beaumont. Her name was treated like a title of royalty. The older women said she was too perfect for ranch dust, while the young cowboys swore she could stop a stampede with a single smile. No church bell rang in Redstone as sweetly as her laughter, or so they claimed. Clara came from a wealthy family, well-bred and well-mannered, a rare thing on the rugged frontier. Her father owned the largest general store between Fort Griffin and the Pecos River, and he raised her like a flower in polished glass, admired by all, untouched by hardship. Every Sunday morning, she descended from their white-railed porch like a queen preparing to address her subjects. Her dresses were brighter than spring meadows, her parasols came from Boston, and her golden curls were famed as the pride of the territory. Mothers pushed their sons into her path. Proprietors offered her the best goods for half the price. Any man lucky enough to carry her baskets from the mercantile strutted afterward like a war hero. With such power came certainty. Clara believed it was her destiny to marry the finest man in the county, someone wealthy, respected, and bold. And lately, whispers suggested that destiny had arrived in the form of Luke Callahan. Luke was different from the young cowboys who swaggered around her like prize roosters. He was quiet, reserved, and seemingly uninterested in the fanfare surrounding her. He had recently purchased a plot of untamed land outside town and turned it into a thriving ranch in record time. He commanded respect not by charm, but by action. He rode hard, worked harder, spoke only when needed, and kept mostly to himself, traits Clara found frustratingly mysterious. To her, his restraint made him all the more fascinating. Surely, she thought, he was simply waiting for the right moment to declare himself. After all, who wouldn't want to be seen riding beside the Belle of the West? When the annual Redstone Harvest Dance was announced, Clara knew the moment had come. Every eligible bachelor would be there, but none would shine like Luke Callahan, and none deserved him more than her. She arrived in a gown of pale rose silk, the entire skirt powdered with pearl dust so fine it shimmered like frost under lantern light. The room fell silent at her entrance, men stumbled, women sighed, and she basked in it like sunlight. But she paid no mind to the stares or the murmurs. Her eyes sought only one man, and she found him across the floor, leaning casually by the refreshment table, speaking with the sheriff. He hadn't yet noticed her arrival. Good, she thought. Let him watch me cross the room. Let him feel the privilege. She glided toward him with perfect grace, the band striking up a waltz as if on cue. Conversation died around them. Everyone waited for the moment when Luke would bow, offer his hand, and claim the town's most desired woman before all. Clara stopped before him, lifted her chin, and smiled. "Mr. Callahan," she purred. "I believe you owe me a dance." All of Redstone Ridge held its breath. For a moment, Luke Callahan simply studied her. His dark eyes were not filled with awe like every other man who had gazed upon Clara. They were steady, unreadable, the kind of eyes that measured storms and cattle alike. His silence lingered long enough for those watching to shuffle closer, eager for the inevitable moment when he would bend at the knee to the Belle of the West and offer her the honor she so clearly deserved. But instead of bowing, he straightened. "Miss Beaumont," he said at last, polite but firm. "I'm obliged by your offer. But I don't believe that dance belongs to me." Clara blinked. She smiled in disbelief, thinking she had misheard. The onlookers chuckled awkwardly, assuming he must be jesting. But Luke didn't smile. His hat remained in his hand, but his posture said no more clearly than any words could. "You don't believe?" Clara repeated, her voice brittle behind her charm. Luke nodded once. "You're a fine lady, Miss Beaumont. But I reckon someone else will appreciate that dance more than I could." Silence. Then a sputter of laughter from the corner. Then another. Like fire catching dry brush, it spread through the crowd. Someone whispered loudly, "He turned her down." Another hollered, "Man must be blind." Even the sheriff, who moments ago had been speaking kindly with Luke, let out a surprised bark of laughter. Clara's cheeks flamed. She had never, in all her life, been publicly denied anything. The music halted. The band members exchanged looks, uncertain whether to continue. Clara's pride refused to show weakness. She lifted her chin, forcing a smile. "A joke, Mr. Callahan," she said crisply. "You do enjoy your humor." But Luke didn't play along. "No joke, ma'am," he said simply, voice low but clear enough for all to hear. "I just don't believe in dancing with a woman I don't intend to court." The laughter died. That was no joke. That was a statement. Clara's breath caught. "Does he think himself too good for me?" she fumed. "Or worse, does he think I'm chasing him?" She swallowed her anger and stepped back with stiff dignity. "Well then," she said coldly, "I suppose I shall find a partner with proper manners." She turned sharply, skirts swishing like angry wind. But as she walked away, she could hear it, the whispers. "Did you see her face? She's furious. First man in history to deny her." Someone muttered, "He'll come crawling back after that stunt. No man snubs Clara Beaumont and keeps his pride." The townsfolk believed it was only a matter of time before Luke came to his senses. After all, what fool would dare turn away the most coveted woman in 3 counties? But Luke Callahan didn't so much as glance in Clara's direction again. Instead, he calmly picked up a glass of lemonade and resumed his quiet conversation, as though nothing unusual had occurred. Clara stood across the room, watching him like a hawk. He did not once look her way. Her fists tightened around her fan. "Very well," she seethed. "If he wishes to play dignity, I shall show him how little I care." But she did care. Because for the first time in her pampered life, she had been dismissed. And worse than rejection was the laughter that followed it. Little did she know, the laughter would not last long. Because soon, the town would learn who Luke did choose. And that, they would never forget. In the days that followed the infamous harvest dance, the story of Luke's refusal spread faster than prairie fire. Every shopkeeper, cattle driver, and farm wife had their own retelling of the moment Clara Beaumont, the Belle of the West, had been politely dismissed. Most believed it was temporary madness on Luke's part. Others claimed he was merely playing hard to get. A few whispered that Clara would surely put him in his place soon enough. But as the gossip swirled like dust devils, something unexpected happened. Luke Callahan returned to town, and he wasn't alone. He rode in on his chestnut stallion, but he wasn't heading toward the mercantile or the saloon. Instead, he stopped outside Harding's livery feed, a humble little stable on the far end of town, a place few ladies ever stepped foot near, for it smelled of hay, sweat, and honest labor. From inside emerged Emma Harding. Most folks barely noticed her on a normal day. She wore plain calico dresses in muted browns and grays. Her dark hair was usually tied back in a practical braid or wrapped in a kerchief to keep out the dust. She wasn't delicate or graceful like Clara. Her hands were calloused from work, her shoulders firm from lifting saddles and feed bags. She walked with purpose, not coyness. To many, she was simply background, someone who existed in the town without truly being seen. But today, Luke saw her. He dismounted and greeted her with a rare smile. Not the polite nod he offered most, but something warm, familiar. She looked up at him, surprised, not because he was there, but because he was smiling at her. And then she did something Clara never had to do, she blushed. Luke took a bundle from his saddle, something wrapped in cloth, and handed it to her. She hesitated only a moment before untying it. Inside was a freshly bound book, rare in those parts. Leather cover, gold-stitched spine, pages crisp and clean. Her eyes widened. "Luke, how did you?" "Ordered it special from St. Louis," he said simply. "Figured you'd finish the last one I lent you." Emma pressed the book to her chest, eyes shimmering, not from romance, but from gratitude. A gift like that was not merely kind. It was thoughtful. And thoughtfulness was worth more than diamonds to a woman who received little more than nods of acknowledgement most days. But the townsfolk watching from afar didn't see kindness, they saw scandal. A rancher of Luke's standing, spending time with her? They whispered behind barrels and windows. Is he buying feed, or courting her? Surely not. She ain't. Well, she ain't Clara. Some scoffed, others scorned, but one voice cut deeper than all. Clara herself stood across the street, parasol shading her face as she watched like a hawk. Her expression remained composed, but those close enough saw her grip whiten around the handle. Emma Harding, plain, unnoticed Emma, had just received what Clara had been denied. Luke Callahan's smile. From that moment, the town's gossip turned feverish. He turned down the Belle for that? Has he lost all sense? But Luke paid no mind to the whispers. He stayed at the livery far longer than any man stayed at a feed store. Long enough for Emma's laughter, soft and rare, to float across the street like music. And for the first time, the town began to wonder if perhaps Luke Callahan wasn't crazy. Perhaps he saw something they didn't. By the end of the month, Redstone Ridge had run out of reasonable explanations. There was no denying it anymore. Luke Callahan was courting Emma Harding. Not as a passing kindness, not as a favor to her aging father, but with intention. With persistence. With certainty. He visited the livery every Sunday after church, bringing her small but thoughtful gifts, not jewelry or perfume like fancy men gave to court society ladies, but practical things Emma actually needed: a sturdy pair of gloves lined with lamb's wool, a tin of imported tea, a soft shawl for evening chores. And always, books. Where others saw a simple working girl, Luke saw a mind that devoured stories faster than he could supply them. Soon, the whole town was talking, even louder than when Clara had been rejected. Some mocked. Some pitied Emma, thinking it some cruel game. Some whispered sympathies toward Clara, who now arrived in town more rarely, her smile stiffer, her laughter shorter. But all mocking ceased the day the news spread like lightning across Redstone. Luke Callahan has asked Emma Harding to marry him. The shock was so great that half the town came running to the church just to confirm it with their own eyes. And confirm it they did, for posted right there on the notice board, under the hymn schedule, was the official announcement. Luke Callahan Emma Harding to be married Sunday next, by Reverend Jacobs. No one believed it would be a grand affair. After all, Emma had no money, no family name, no social standing. Many assumed it would be a quiet ceremony with just the pastor and her father. Perhaps a few hands from Luke's ranch. But they underestimated the appetite of Redstone Ridge for spectacle. On the morning of the wedding, the entire town turned out, not to celebrate, but to spectate. Ladies arrived in their finest gowns just to compare themselves. Men lined the fence rails, trading wagers on how long such a match would last. Children ran freely, sensing the peculiar thrill of a moment that would be told and retold for years. Even Clara Beaumont came. She descended from her family carriage in a pale blue gown that nearly rivaled her appearance at the harvest dance, only this time, no heads turned for her first. All eyes were fixed on the church doors, waiting to see her. Not Clara. Emma. At last the church bells rang. Emma Harding stepped into the sunlight. No pearls. No painted face. No silk, just a soft cream dress, simple as dawn, and a sprig of wild flowers in her braided hair. She walked slowly, her arm looped through her frail father's. Her hands trembled, but her chin was lifted. Some women whispered, "She looks plain as ever." Others murmured, "Yet somehow, she looks beautiful." But all of them fell silent when Luke Callahan turned to face her. And the entire town saw a man look at a woman as if she were the only thing that had ever mattered. No pride. No calculation. Just devotion, fierce and unashamed. Even Clara felt it. The clever remarks she had prepared turned to ashes in her mouth. For the first time, she wondered if perhaps she had been chasing admiration her whole life, while Emma had been quietly earning love. And as Emma reached the altar, and Luke took her hand with a tenderness that silenced every last whisper, the town of Redstone Ridge realized They were not witnessing a scandal. They were witnessing a miracle. Marriages in frontier towns were often judged not by their wedding day, but by the months that followed. Some burned hot like summer lightning and vanished just as quick. Others settled like dust, quiet, unremarkable, unnoticed. But the marriage of Luke Callahan and Emma Harding did neither. It blossomed. Luke brought Emma to his ranch, not as a helper or a guest, but as the lady of the house. He had built the land with his own hands, but Emma brought something far rarer, warmth. Within weeks, the once plain cabin bore curtains of soft calico in the windows. A wooden bookshelf took its place by the hearth, filled not just with Luke's volumes, but Emma's as well. The yard, once bare and practical, now sprouted marigolds and climbing roses she had planted with her own hands. And Luke? He changed, too, not in pride or posture, but in softness. The stoic rancher who once kept to himself could now be heard laughing from across the pastures as Emma chased chickens or teased him over burnt biscuits. The men who worked his cattle noticed he smiled more. That his evenings were no longer silent. That his meals were no longer taken alone. Word spread. At first, people visited the Callahan ranch out of curiosity. But they returned because they found something unexpected there: peace. Emma was no longer the quiet stable girl. She was Mrs. Callahan, who welcomed widows for tea on lonely afternoons, who mended children's torn sleeves without expecting payment, who remembered every birthday and brought warm bread to the sick without asking. The same women who once whispered that she was too plain now found themselves confiding in her, seeking her counsel. The men who doubted Luke's judgment now spoke of him with newfound respect. As for Clara Beaumont, she watched from afar. At first, she told herself that Emma's goodness was exaggerated, that frontier folk were easily impressed. But as months passed, bitterness slowly melted into something she hardly recognized: understanding. One crisp autumn morning, Clara rode out to the Callahan ranch alone. She found Emma hanging laundry under the open blue sky, a strand of hair fallen loose against her cheek. Emma turned, startled at first, then smiled gently. Clara dismounted slowly. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Clara drew in a breath and said quietly, "Emma, I came to tell you something." Emma tilted her head. "Yes?" Clara's pride trembled, but she forced the words out. "I once thought beauty was something worn," she said softly. "But I see now. It's something earned." Emma's eyes glistened, but she said nothing. She simply nodded, a silent forgiveness. That evening, when Clara rode away from the ranch, something unexpected happened. For the first time since her humiliation at the harvest dance, her bitterness faded. Because she had seen with her own eyes that Luke had not chosen less. He had chosen wisely. In the years that followed, the story of Luke and Emma Callahan was told and retold, not as gossip, but as legend. And whenever someone recalled the night Luke refused the Belle of the West, they no longer laughed. They said instead, "That was the night one man proved that true love sees not with the eyes, but with the soul."